We are finally back with Fight Night Picks and one of our favorite segments. This one's called Parry Counter. And Matt, at the start of 2020, when we were a little bit starved of the fights, we came up with an idea to answer your questions here on YouTube. And Matt, we put out a poll, quite a few different polls, one over on Instagram, one on YouTube. And everybody and their dog seemed to have an answer or a question that they wanted answered. So, over on Instagram, ACO_27 asked, assuming Khabib stays retired, who deserves the next title shot? I think Charles versus Dustin. And Matt, we saw that incredible main event, UFC 257, Dustin Poirier getting his revenge against Conor McGregor in a great fight. An all-timer for Dustin Poirier. Hot sauce over whiskey. Overall, though, we've got a great top five in this division. Maybe one guy kind of falling out of favor. What are your thoughts as to a next likely fight for a guy like Dustin Poirier?
So it's really interesting because right now, I think it's safe to say that lightweight is the premier division in all the UFC. And it's been like that for a little while. It feels like ever since McGregor did kind of enter the 155-pound discussion after he had won the 145-pound belt, that division is the glory division. Of course, Khabib, one of the biggest names in the sport. Dustin now with the win over Conor, one of the biggest names in the sport. And then, of course, you've always got the Nate Diaz's in there and a lot of other top-tier fighters, Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje. So right now, the top five is as talent-rich as ever. You've got guys like Charles Oliveira, who really seems to be that Tony Ferguson 2.0, if you will, and he is what a lot of people thought Tony would be, especially at the top of the division. So there's a ton of great choices that you can pick from at 155, but I do agree with them. I think it is hard to choose against Charles Oliveira being the most deserving to fight Dustin Poirier, because I get it. Right now, a lot of people, they're really high on the Michael Chandler hype. I know both of us are, being such big Bellator guys, but you just have to look at the body of work that Charles Oliveira has been able to accomplish inside the UFC, and I get it. Maybe a first-round knockout over Dan Hooker is a little bit more impressive in the moment than a 3-round decision win over Tony Ferguson, but when you add that dominant win over Ferguson on top of the fact that he stopped Kevin Lee right at the start of the pandemic, on top of the fact that he's been able to stop guys like Jared Gordon, Jim Miller, I understand some of those other guys aren't at the level of competition of the Dan Hookers, the Tony Ferguson's, but the fact that he's gone out there and basically been able to finish all 8 of his last opponents except for Tony, and really if there was a minute left in that first round, he probably would have got the armbar win. So I'm very comfortable in saying Charles Oliveira probably deserves the next shot at, I'll say shot at Dustin Poirier, just because I'm assuming Poirier will kind of be the A side of who else is going to get in there for the vacant title, but I do agree with them. I like Oliveira in that spot.
That's the weirdest part of this conversation. You look at the UFC's rankings fresh as of today, you still have Khabib Nurmagomedov as your champion, as your number 1 pound-for-pound fighter, and it's just odd to see that considering he doesn't really seem committed to actually stepping foot in a cage.
Think about the numbers, Craig.
He has EFC over in Russia, and it doesn't really seem like competition is, in his future, especially stepping foot in the octagon. So you have a look at the rest of the challengers, and Charles Oliveira, to a lot of people, seems like that next likely guy. We put out a poll over on YouTube asking who could be next for Dustin Poirier in this lightweight division. 1,800 total votes just since last night. 62% of voters going with Charles Oliveira. You have 9% of voters going with a second fight with Justin Gaethje. 5% of voters think that a second fight with Khabib will happen. Then you go down, 18% think a McGregor fight, a third McGregor fight, we could get that. The other 5%, other explained below, Michael Chandler stands. So it does seem very interesting. And then you try and make a case for these fighters. A good case was made by a lot of different fight fans for a guy like Justin Gaethje to get his second fight with Dustin Poirier. Now, the weird thing for me in looking at that is, yes, Justin Gaethje took on arguably the greatest of all time. He's sitting behind me in the poster. But can you really make a shot for Gaethje to come off a title fight loss to fight a guy that he's already lost to before?
It is a tough matchup to make. And listen, the first Justin Gaethje-Dustin Poirier fight was arguably fight of the year. Like, I wouldn't be sad if the UFC decides to put those two in there again. It would be difficult, though, because right now Dustin Poirier looks as good as he's ever looked. So it is really hard to say, okay, this version of Poirier is probably better than the version of Poirier who already beat Gaethje. And Gaethje's coming off a loss right now. So although entertainment-wise, that fight is probably near the top of the list, I would more likely go with Michael Chandler as my second favorite option for Dustin Poirier. Again, it's just more of the unknown to go with Michael Chandler. My only issue with Chandler kind of jumping into that title picture so early, we've sort of talked about this, is he's not a member of the 5-round club. And I understand he's gone 5 rounds in Bellator many, many times. And it's not really for me. I'm not worried about his cardio by any means. I haven't seen him go 5 rounds with top-tier UFC talent. Now, I'm not going to discredit Dan Hooker by any means. I'm not going to go out there and discredit Brent Primus or Benson Henderson or any of the other great fighters that Michael Chandler has not only fought but beat as well. It's just, I would really like to see Michael Chandler fight a Gaethje for those 25 minutes. Because, again, we both had Michael Chandler winning that fight against Dan Hooker, but we didn't learn a lot about him the way he beat Dan Hooker. He went out there, he knocked him out very early. I still have the same questions around Michael Chandler. How is his cardio in that 4th and 5th round? Because he does like to wrestle really hard. How is that chin? So for me, in an ideal situation, I would love to see Michael Chandler fight Justin Gaethje in like a fight night main event, have that be a nice 5-round fight, and that's a fight that sells too. If you hear Michael Chandler's fighting Justin Gaethje, like that's a guaranteed fight of the night without a doubt. And then you could use Dustin Poirier, who there's going to be a ton of eyes on his next fight no matter what. So I don't think it's a case of, oh, we need Poirier in there with another guy who has big drawing power. It's a perfect excuse to kind of boost the star power, if you will, of Charles Oliveira. And both guys do a lot of charitable work, so you could really draw that into the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if charitable work really brings in the eyeballs, but I do agree. The fight to make, Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier for the belt. That you have to go with that. Now, the weird part about this is the fact that Dana White's come out and said maybe Chandler Poirier is the fight that he wants to make. You know, you can't really hold him to his word. I don't know if they got him because they haven't really made an announcement there. And they rescinded their shot at the media. So who really knows what their thought process is these days? But if you do look at the landscape, it really is a battle of really the top 4. And again, that new entrant being Michael Chandler. A Chandler fight against Gaethje sells. Gaethje's coming off a loss, but it's against, again, the greatest of all time. Michael Chandler's coming off of a great win, a prove-me-type win over Dan Hooker, but I'm sure there's going to be some boo-birds out there and some naysayers saying, oh, wow, Hooker was shot after the Poirier fight. He didn't really look like himself. And I will agree to a certain extent that he didn't really look like himself in there. He was tentative in the fight, and really the circumstances surrounding it from Dan Hooker from a personal side of things are definitely less than ideal. So for Chandler, a fight against Gaethje, that makes a lot of sense. For Poirier, a fight against Oliveira makes a lot of sense. I don't know in terms of, eyeballs-wise what you get if you are the UFC, if you make a fight like that. But for me, then we go from our number 1, our number 2, our 3, and our 4. Then we're left with our number 5 fighter, who to me seems left out at this point. And that right now is Tony Ferguson. And he's coming off of 2 losses. And they're not just 2 normal losses. It's a loss by, absolute... It was death by 1,000 paper cuts, but at the same time, those were heavy paper cuts. Like, those were cardstock paper cuts. And then in his next fight against Charles Oliveira, we just got smothered. And we've never seen Tony Ferguson get smothered in a fight like that before. So for me, Ferguson's pretty well out of the conversation. I know a lot of...
It's wild to say that, isn't it? Like, Tony Ferguson was on the longest win streak in UFC at the time, and he was at the top of the division for what felt like years. Like, he never really got his due. I understand he fought for the interim title, and they matched him up to fight for the title so many times, but it is just wild to actually say those words. Like, Tony Ferguson's probably no longer an elite lightweight.
But the problem with Tony Ferguson now is, well, it's not he should fight Hooker, he should fight RDA. There's a few people out there, maybe he should fight Conor. But I've seen a lot of the conversation around he should fight Cowboy Cerrone again. Like, he should start fighting way outside or on the fringes, so to speak. So it's an odd spot if you're Ferguson. For me, I don't have him considered in that upper tier. And then if you continue down along through the rankings, who do you want him to fight? Islam Makhachev? Like, does he fight a big prospect? So for me...
I'd like Paul Felder. Both guys are a little bit older. Paul Felder's already talked about retirement. It doesn't feel like Felder's fighting for the title. He's just in fun fights that might get him to the title. So personally, I'd love that fight.
To me, the big fight and the one that needs to have the conversation around it is, what do you do with Conor McGregor? Because you look at the fact that he hasn't won at lightweight in years. We're talking over 4 years to this point. UFC 205. He puts on his big masterclass against Eddie Alvarez, Bellator zone, or I guess I should say now, one championship zone. But if you really look at the way that this landscape shakes out, McGregor's now at 6. Just below him, a guy that put on an impressive performance in his lightweight reintroduction, I should say, the former lightweight champion, Rafael dos Anjos, and he looked great against Felder. He really put on a great performance and showed that he could make the cut and make it successfully. To me, that's a perfect fight. It was a fight that was already supposed to happen. RDA broke his foot, in steps Nate Diaz, and the rest is history. RDA ended up losing his belt to Eddie Alvarez, and the show goes on. But for me, that's a great fight. I would really look forward to that fight. Not just the old jawing from, the matchup that should have been, or you'd hope that there'd be jawing, but as far as a fight and where styles make fights, I think that's a great one.
100%. And I really do think you have to take a lot of what Conor said right after the loss. He did say, I want to get back in there with Dustin, of course. The trilogy with Nate, of course, is out there. But he alluded a lot to the fact that he's now lost to 2 southpaws back-to-back, and that he would like to fight, or not back-to-back, but 2 of his main losses are 2 southpaws, in Diaz and Poirier, of course. If he fought RDA, not that that's a warm-up fight by any means, because Rafael dos Anjos is nobody's fool, but I would argue he's a little bit behind where Dustin Poirier is right now. He's another southpaw who throws a lot of kicks, who will mix the wrestling in. So if you are looking for what in boxing would be considered a bit of a tune-up fight, a guy who does fight with a similar style to the guy who we're trying to get the rematch with, RDA would make for a perfect fight, and I do like sort of the built-in storyline of, well, if he had originally fought Conor all the way back at 196, really the history of MMA might be a lot different. So there'd be a lot of really fun build-up in that fight, and I agree with you. I do think that's kind of the perfect matchmaking going forward.
We're going with Poirier to take on a really tough out in Charles Oliveira. Gaethje against Chandler. Ferguson, maybe you get a fringe guy. Maybe you get Paul Felder. And for McGregor, a fight against Rafael dos Anjos. That's just what we're thinking. Let us know down in the comments section below if we're A, crazy, but B, let us know what you want to talk about. Fight Night Picks, Parry and Counter. It's something that we're going to continue to throw out there during the year. It's a lot of fun for us to answer the questions here. You can always find us over on Instagram at Fight Night Picks, at Craig Allen FMP, at Matt Allen FMP, and over there on Instagram as well, we do these segments. They're called Keeping Score, and I don't think a lot of people from YouTube have found those, but a lot of those questions maybe we've answered. Maybe we've done segments over there. Those are a lot of fun for us as well. And make sure you also check out Manscaped with Fight Night Picks. Make sure you check them out, manscaped.com. Use the promo code FMP at checkout. You're going to save 20% off your order and get free shipping. They've got awesome stuff, awesome boxes, great travel case, great products, Matt. Maybe you need yourself the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant. I don't know. I use it sometimes. Maybe you need the Weed Whacker. Good old nose hair trimmer. I'll use it on air. There's all kinds of great stuff. If you check them out, it's manscaped.com. Promo code FMP at checkout. You're going to save 20% off and free shipping. And Matt, I'm really looking forward to the reintroduction of Parry Counter. So as we always say with Fight Night Picks, let's get into it.